Gentlemen, welcome back to the Sea Lord Naval Academy. Today, we are beginning our second course on the funnest, most effective strategies in World of Warships. While the first course isn't a prerequisite for this course, if you do find yourself enjoying this class, make sure to check out the first. But now, gentlemen, strategies. In this course, we will be going over the most effective strategies in World of Warships, with an emphasis on fun. A concept that fewer and fewer members of the player base actually understands and can get a firm grasp on. We'll be ranking these strategies on the tier list from F, the worst, to S, the most sublime. So let us get started. We begin at the bottom with F tier. These strategies are miserable, dull, downright boring, and will lead your team to nowhere but defeat. The island SWAT stack occurs when the friendly team decides to all travel to the same flank, which by itself isn't a bad thing. Having overwhelming numbers can be quite advantageous. However, rather than push with the clear numbers advantage, the team decides to sit stacked up behind an island or two and do nothing. Despite having up to a 5-1 advantage at times, the team decides that scraping their paint is too big a risk and would rather sit behind an island and slowly lose. F tier. Shotgunning is an all too familiar maneuver nowadays. Shotgunning is when a submarine uses their superior stealth and speed to walk up to an unsuspecting ship and dump their entire load of torpedoes into their hull from point blank range. 9 out of 10 times, this of course leads to the target ship being blown out of the water. However, as effective as this might seem, shotgunning has its own issues. First off, it's not quite as easy as it might seem to be. Sure, if you find that one ship by itself sitting in the back of the map, it is easy to pull off. But what you don't see is the many failed attempts to pull it off on ships that are paying attention or on alone. This, of course, quickly leads to the destruction of the submarine player, leaving the team a ship down. Also, out of principle, F tier.
Shotguns at the right range with the right load will physically remove a chunk of shit off your opponent and throw that shit on the floor.
Backline torpedo spammers are those players in ships like Shimikazes, Asachios, Shinans, or even Yoshinos that sit at their maximum torpedo range and just spam torpedoes in the vain attempt to get the occasional torpedo hit. Of course, they contribute almost nothing to the match because instead of contesting or capturing caps or running torpedo interference for their fellow teammates, they're just sitting literally at 20 kilometers throwing torpedoes, occasionally maybe getting 1, perhaps 2 hits per match. Needless to say that these are the players who are most excited for the removal of friendly fire. So now they can send out walls of torpedoes without having to use a singular ounce of brain power. F tier.
The old torpedo, sir.
Shut up, Stepanek.
Alright gentlemen, welcome to D tier. Here these strategies require more brain power and might even be somewhat useful. The Island Tick is a destroyer that beelines directly into the cap circle and runs directly into the island in that cap, and proceeds to sit there for the majority of the game. Now, while securing the cap is most important, there's a difference between contesting the cap and just sitting there snugly behind an island and doing nothing else. However, this does at least prevent the enemy from obtaining the cap and can even lead to the cap being captured for the friendly team, and they are contributing more to the match than the destroyer that dies in the first 5 minutes, so D tier.
To know what to do when you're been bitten by a tick, and the crucial...
The team has the common sense to continue on through the flank and into the enemy team. The lemming train can be a very powerful tactic if the team continues to push through the enemy lines and overwhelm the enemy. However, most times a lemming train is formed, the friendly players lose about 50 IQ points and proceed to sell into enemy torpedoes and crossfire. There's also about a 60% chance that the lemming train will just stop where it's at and proceed to camp in a corner of the map, leading of course to death. So sometimes it works, sometimes it does not. D tier. Gentlemen, we move quickly into C tier. This is where the strategies start to get good. We begin with a strategy that is as old as it is reliable. Kiting. Kiting is when you notice that things on your side of the map are not going so well, so you point your stern toward the enemy team and start running. At the same time, you begin to open up on the enemy ships and begin to farm them. Most of the time, the enemy will get so tunnel visioned on you that they will overextend in their pursuit of your HP, pushing well past their friendly lines and right into your team. Best done with heavy cruisers with good HE and German battleships with secondary builds. A boring strategy, but an effective one. C tier.
Let's go
fly a kite.
Next up is the legendary 899 division. Take a tier 8 CV, like the Graf Zeppelin, and 2 Musashis. Form a division together and get to hunting CVs using the spotting power of your CV, the long range and big guns of your Musashi to pummel the enemy CV to death. Now you might be wondering, how is a strategy like this at C tier? It removes CVs from the game, and you get to bring a Musashi. Well, you see, this strategy is pretty well known by now, and most CV players are smarter than what is commonly believed and can, in fact, read. So once they see your CV killer squad, they will either run to the back of the map or to the safety of the island cover. So you have to act fast to have a chance at this working. If you do succeed, you've given your team a massive advantage by taking out the enemy CV. If you don't manage to pull it off, you still have 2 Musashis and a CV working together, so C tier. No armor, best armor is the ultimate test of faith in Wargaming's armor system. When playing a light cruiser like Smolensk, and you run into a battleship at close range, simply sell flat broadside to them. In most cases, the battleship player will aim at your flat broadside, overjoyed at the fact that they have a broadside cruiser a few kilometers away from them, but rather than absolutely delete you, they will overpin your citadel. This does, however, depend on a couple of things. 1, the BB player not knowing to plunge his shells into the water to slow them down before impacting your hull, therefore leading to the shells not overpinning your hull but detonating in your citadel. 2, the BB player not being in a ship that has short fuse AP like the British battleships. If those 2 conditions aren't in play, then you will likely eat minimal damage from the battleship shells and will be free to farm them down with your guns, or blast them with torpedoes. High risk, high reward, faith in Ouija is rewarded with survival, C tier.
In today's episode, we're going to talk about how the armor works and how to penetrate it the right way.
Get 2 brothers in your map rotation? Go mid. Oh, you're not in a brawling battleship? Go mid. But it's a light cruiser? Mid. I don't even know how to brawl. Be a man. Go mid. Sometimes it'll surprise the hell out of the enemy team, and it'll be exactly what your team needs to win, as the enemy players will rush from one of the 2 flanks back toward the mid to counter your mid push. If you win the lottery and get 2 brothers with a brawling ship, you're legally obligated to go down mid. Now this does depend on the enemy team not doing the same, but if they do, you're in for one hell of a match. C tier.
Be a man.
Okay fellas, this is where the good stuff starts. Welcome to B tier. We begin B tier with the Angry Meth Ball. You're going to need friends for this one, gentlemen, so first, get a Graf Zeppelin. Second, acquire Luchins. Thirdly, build into secondaries. Then acquire 2 friends with kids. No, not those kids, this kid. The job of the 2 kids is to be 2 things for the Graf Zeppelin. 1, a smoke bot. The 2 kids will alternate smoke screens for the Graf Zeppelin, with the Graf Zeppelin calling the smoke in terms of location and the timing. The goal is to get the Graf Zeppelin into the cap unspotted. Secondly, an AA screen. The kids will provide a no-fly zone to cover the Graf Zeppelin from any type of air attack from the enemy CV. Once you have the Graf Zeppelin in the cap, you now have a godly secondary platform to smite the enemy destroyers and cruisers with, even the battleships. The Graf Zeppelin still uses its planes to attack the enemy ships and to spot for the kids inside the smoke. Altogether, you have a very angry ball of smoke to slaughter the enemy ships with between the secondary firepower of the Graf Zeppelins and the main guns and torpedoes of the kids. With Luchins as the commander of the Graf Zeppelin, you will get a boost to your secondary performance after 100 secondary hits, and you can heal your Graf Zeppelin by earning 3 spotting ribbons. All in all, a very angry, meth-fueled smoke ball. B tier. This next strat requires you to commit acts of unspeakable heresy. First, you need a Kitakami. Then, your friend needs a Kitakami. Then your third friend needs a Kitakami. You can see where this is going. You 3 shall become harbingers of doom. Combined, you have 143 torpedoes at your disposal. There are 2 ways you can play this. 1, the 3 of you can simply flood the cap with 140 torpedoes every 5 minutes. What are the enemy ships going to do? Dodge them? 2, the more exciting and manly method of playing this is using the 3 Kitakamis as one big YOLO Emilio. using the exhaust smoke and engine boost of the 3 Kitakamis to walk toward the enemy ships and deliver 140 torpedoes directly to the ships. Do also remember that every ship has one last torpedo. B tier.
Straight to hell, to the boiler room of hell, all the way down.
Gather together 3 of Stalin's mightiest ships, some combination of Moskva, Stalingrad, Petro, and Kremlin. Use your almighty bow-tanking abilities to form a line made of pure Stalinium and push the enemy team out of your flank, chaining your radar and hydro to make DDs run in fear, and covering each other with your AA to make CVs cry. Coordinate targets to delete with your Soviet bias AP, crush the enemies like Stalin crushed Trotsky. B tier.
The phrase Iron Curtain is frequently used in relation.
Get into a division with an American CV, like a Midway or FDR, and then take 2 American hybrid battleships, like the Louisiana. The CV then selects a target. The CV bombs the target with HE bombs, starting a fire or 2. The target ship will then usually damage con those 2 fires. Then the 2 hybrid ship squadrons come in and drop their HE bombs on the target, starting more fires on the target ship that already used up its damage con. Yes, you are a horrible person for this, but it is most effective. B tier.
Of bringing the planes in very low, and instead of using bombs, he is going to use incendiary.
Alright, gentlemen, we are now getting into the exquisite territory. Welcome to A tier. Gather together your pasta forces to form the spiciest meatball. Get a Napoli, a Michelangelo, and a Giuseppe Verdi. Choose a flank to run down together. The 3 pasta boys chain their exhaust smoke and catapult fighters in such a way that they are always concealed in smoke, yet have spotting. You target enemy ships one at a time with your sap secondaries, melting them down. The Michelangelo covers the group with hydro in case any DD or sub gets any ideas. Very few ships can survive the combined pasta assault. A tier.
Mamma mia, that's a spicy meatball!
Get your spiciest and fastest baguettes into a division. Get a Bourgogne, Marseille, and a Marceau or a Kleber. All gather together in one flank and run it down with your engine boost. Overwhelm the enemy team with your speed and shells, focus targets one at a time to melt them as fast as possible, working away from destroyers to cruisers to battleships in that order. Blind them by taking out their destroyers, eliminate your HE spam competition by taking out their cruisers, and finally feast on the HP pool of their battleships. There is very little that the enemy can do against the finest baguettes assembled together. A tier. Give the enemy ships the true Chicago experience by going into battle with not 1, not 2, but 3 Illinois. Shower the enemy with 36 203mm HE shells every 7 seconds at range. Once you get close, swap on over to the AP and pin the ever-loving crap out of the enemy ships. The amount of shells being delivered to the enemy ships will give them the true Chicago experience. A tier.
You send one of yours to the hospital, you send one of his to the morgue. That's the Chicago way.
Welcome to the top of the list, gentlemen. Here we have the finest strats available. Let's dive on in. Get a St. Vincent, and for the commander build, take Furious, Adrenaline Rush, and Fearless Brawler, but don't take Fire Prevention. For the module build, make sure you take the Reload module. You are now going to min-max your reload time. St. Vincent has a super heal, which means you can abuse Adrenaline Rush and Furious. With this, your St. Vincent will have a ridiculous reload time, allowing you to dish out your British BB-HE at a ludicrous rate. Then, when you get in close, you switch to your AP and start obliterating broadsides. And keep in mind too, you still have your 30k alpha torpedoes, all on a ship that has an engine boost, high degree of maneuverability, and massive 457mm guns. This will truly cause you to ask the question, who needs HP? S tier. Our next strategy, gentlemen, is for those of you that wish to fight the meta. Fighting the meta is no small task in today's World of Warships, so we need to take the best of the best for this. Take some combination of Schlieffen, Napoli, GK, just 3 excellent brawling ships. You can even take 2 of the same if you wish to do so, like 2 Schlieffen. They're some of the best brawling battleships in today's World of Warships, so why not take 2 of them, right? What you're going to do is stick the Napoli out front, and when you approach the enemy team, the Napoli will activate their exhaust smoke. Then you'll have the 2 Schlieffens coming up behind the Napoli inside the exhaust smoke. All 3 ships will utilize their secondary firepower to melt down the enemy ships. And since the Schlieffen, GK, whatever you take, and the Napoli are some of the single best ships in today's World of Warships for brawling, they will be absolutely exquisite at pulling this off. Now you must use teamwork and communication to target down the enemy ships, going after the destroyers and cruisers and then the battleships. Getting those pesky destroyers with their torpedoes out of the way, then the cruisers with their annoying DPM out of the way too, leaving just the battleships. Now, the enemy team, in most cases, will simply not know what to do because it's been several years since a team in randoms have been this brazen with a secondary brawling battleship comp and push. So in most cases, they'll just turn and run, while your team sits in the back staring in awe at the audacity for you to leave spawn before the 10-minute mark. Now, this also will not be easy to pull off, as so many other ships are so good at sitting in the back and camping. However, using the smokescreen the Napoli provides, you can limit the amount of ships that can actually detect you and therefore engage you and get into close range combat before it's too late. So use your skills, use the ships, fight the meta, and win. S tier. And that, gentlemen, concludes this video. Take the knowledge I have given you here, go into World of Warships, and have a most excellent, and more importantly, a fun time. If you enjoyed this video, pay your tuition by dropping a like, leaving a comment, and above all else, subscribing to the channel. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to check out the other tier list videos, which I have conveniently compiled into a playlist. The link to that will be down below in the description as well. Hope you all have a wonderful Friday, and wonderful rest of your week. Hope to catch you guys in the next one.